Hello and welcome, leaders. This is yet another session from the Executive Network. It's a session on the series we started at the beginning of this month on understanding the concept of kingdom leadership. But of course, to do justice to the subject, it was imperative for us to take a very good look at what kingdom actually means in this context. So I would like to welcome those who are joining us for the very first time. This is an organization that is set out to bring about positive change in the leadership discourse as we look at better ways of being a positive influence on our society, on our organizations, and our home, and of course, in every area of influence. We like to say this way: we believe that everyone is a leader on this platform, and that is very true because what we're about to discuss in this particular session relates to housewives as well as to company executives. It relates to um, corporate giants as well as religious folks. So, whatever your background, whatever your persuasions, we welcome you to this session as we um, explore this vital topic, which, as we will have it, is likely to be a way to wrap it up um, to wrap up the series, which we have started looking at over the course of the month. By the way, if you missed previous sessions, you may want to go over to our YouTube channel, which you probably have seen already in your email, the email you got from us, and just look at the sessions we've done in the past and uh, use them for your benefit. All right. Also, if you want to communicate with us through this platform, you may want to just chat with us and you are and where you're joining us from, and also to share your views. So use our on that tab and just let us know what you think as we progress. All right, we're looking at this topic, which is kingdom concept of government. Um, each time we talk about kingdom, we are not talking about anything that is religious. We actually mean the very word kingdom, which also means government. So how does this relate? How does this apply to us? That's what we want to be looking at. By the way, what we are looking at in our discourse is actually considering the precept and concept of government, or the precept and concept of kingdoms. And so we're not going into absolute facts as yet. We're looking at the concept because when a good teacher must learn to teach concept properly, precept and concept properly, and facts can always be fitted into the concept as you go. And as a matter of fact, it keeps you safe when you deal in concept because facts always change, but principles remain the same. They are unchanging. Right. So we want to begin this way by talking about what we call the divine government mandate. What do we mean by this? As a matter of fact, why do we have the word divine and government sitting together? It sounds like an antithesis, but I like you to consider this that in the very first instance, government is a divine mandate. Government is a divine mandate. That may cause some rumbles for some people, but the very idea of government started from origins beyond human source, which means government was actually the idea that the divine being had when he thought about mankind. Now, look at this. The original vision and mandate of God was to establish a heavenly colony of mankind from heaven on earth to govern, to rule, to dominate earth by establishing his standards, his conditions, his parameters, his principles, his values, his morals, and laws on earth. If you've been following us from the previous sessions, you will have seen that we've actually built up onto this state to be able to make this sort of statement. We've talked about what we actually meant by a heavenly kingdom related as it relates to the kingdom on earth, and what kingdoms actually mean. We actually look at the characteristics of government, of kingdoms, dare I say. And all of this is what has come to this point where we can say with a degree of assurance or certainty that the original vision and mandate of God was to establish a heavenly colony of mankind from heaven on earth for the sake of governance and administration. As a matter of fact, we did say the last time that kingdoms, by their very nature, must expand their influence over territories. It is normal, it is a nature of kingdoms to expand their influence over territories, because the glory of kingdoms is territorial influence. And that is true, or that is very correct all through history. That's a fact of history. But let's stay with the concept for now as we progress. The divine government mandate is to establish the world of heaven on earth. And you can see that I've deliberately highlighted those words, the world of heaven on earth. What do you mean by world? World. What do you mean by heaven, and what do you mean by earth? Now, the word world is actually the Greek word which you call cosmos. And the word earth, we know that that's the planet. And of course, heaven is the heavens beyond that is invisible but very tangible. So looking at the world, the earth and the world, let's take a look at this just to deepen our understanding. The earth, as we know, is the physical territory and its atmosphere. And of course, that contains biotic and abiotic elements. Folks who've done biology in early days will probably be aware or familiar with those terms. Biotic simply means living, and abiotic means non-living things. So, of course, by that we mean that the earth contains rocks, contains minerals, diamonds, gold, water, and the rest of it. It also contains tangible living things that we know of, the animals, the plants. And so when we're talking about the earth, we are talking about the physical territory and the atmosphere around it, including the oxygen, the nitrogen around it. But when we're talking about world, we're actually talking about the governing systems that influence or that influence the territory of Earth. The world or cosmos is the governing system that influences the territory of Earth. How is this important? When we talk about leaders who are going to be bringing a different kind of influence into environment from the biblical perspective, it is imperative for us to understand the differences between these words or these words. The earth being the physical territory and the world being the system of government over it. Let me explain this in this context. Everyone lives in one home or the other, or in one house or the other. Now, you can look at the house where we live as the physical territory. But upon that house, there is a home in there. That home is somewhat intangible. It's the governing system that controls the house. As a matter of fact, it's actually tangible because you can feel it. When a home is in a place, you can feel its impact. And you know that the home is actually created by the people that live in the house. The house, of course, is made from physical earth, the rocks, cement, and the rest of them, metals, wood. But the home that is in the house is actually created by the people in the house. And I may be preempting myself for a bit, but let me go this way. That the quality, therefore, of the home is absolutely dependent on the quality of the people that make up the home. So, so we are looking at this in this context that when we're talking about world, we actually mean systems that control the environment. Okay. Now, the earth is determined by the quality of the world that operates on it. Just like the house is determined by the quality of the home that operates within it. I mean, they are relatable, and we can draw our cue from that analogy. The home is as good as the people in it, just like the omelette is as good as the egg from which you made it. Okay, so the world, in this case, we mean the systems, the governing system, is as good as the quality of human agents in it. And of course, those human agents form the government in the world, which rules the earth. Just like the human agents in the home, they are the government over the house. So this is the context that I would like to present to us to look at in understanding the differences between the earth and the world. So that when we come across a scripture such as this, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, then the world and the people therein. So the earth has its own content, then the world has its own content, which are people. Now, that is not tautology, but it's highlighting very fundamental precepts that help us to consider that build our frame of references. Now, we're still obviously talking about the biblical philosophy of kingdom of leadership, and by that we're talking about kingdom leadership. So we can indulge ourselves as we use biblical references just in this series. Now, what is the message of the Bible? I mentioned a bit of this last week, but I'd like to submit again that the primary message of the Bible is the heavenly kingdom of God and its influence on earth. I'm saying, or I've been saying over this period, that we are focusing on the precept and the concept. We're looking at the big picture. Now, in between the big picture, you can always feel the pieces. That's fine. But let's look at the big picture and understand it as a whole, have a holistic view of what the primary message of the Bible is. It's the heavenly kingdom of God and its influence on earth. Of course, I did explain the kingdom of heaven as different from the kingdom of God. Kingdom of heaven being the territory, and the kingdom of God being the governing influence over the territory. And of course, the government being God. Right. So the primary message of the Bible is simply, in very simple terms, the celestial influencing the terrestrial. The celestial being heavens, and of course, the terrestrial being earth. Right. So the principal purpose and plan of God was to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth. Keep it that simple, because this is fundamental to how we look at kingdom leadership. Now, let's look at what the creator of heaven said. If the principal purpose of the Bible is the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. Now, what what is it that is in the mind of the creator of the government? Now, I want to state that at this point that the most important institution on earth is government. Some people might think, oh no, I don't agree with that. It must be the home. Well, that's fine. But you look at it, if you go back to the biblical reference again, you see that government was established before even the family. And I go as far back as, you know, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And then there was chaos and it began to order it. And by the time it got to verse 26, in order to preserve the order, he said, now I need an administrator. I need someone to look after government on earth. So he said, let us create man in our image and let them have dominion. Dominion is a word which means ruling, which means being in control, which means government. So the most important institution on earth, therefore, is government. As a matter of fact, the first institution on earth is government. Government, as a matter of fact, is more important than religious organizations. Well, if you don't agree with me, one simple inference I want to draw us to is the fact that religious organizations actually take their licenses from government. Of course they do. They take their license to operate from government. And if the government say, no, well, you can't operate anymore, then, well, they'll be sent out. It's as simple as that. Government is actually more important than religious organizations. Not only that, and I'm going to have to say this, that government has become more important than the family. Government has actually become more important than family because government actually gives licenses to those who get married. As a matter of fact, government actually are in control of it because you go to the registry and you register your family with the government to say, well, recognize us, deal with us. So government, even though family itself is a government, but there is a bigger enclave of government which is actually bigger than the family itself. And that is what we're talking about. Now, government, as we know, is the preoccupation of every nation. Every nation seeks some form of government over its territory. And that's why every 4 years or every 5 years, we actually do the process of elections. We elect governments over our nations. In fact, even in organizations, you have what they call board of governors or board of directors. Their job is government of the organizations. Now, the concept of government was actually created and introduced by the creator himself. So, and that's the point. That's why I want to rest this. The concept of government was actually not man's idea. As a matter of fact, it is innate in every human to want to govern and administer their territory. That is why you see people, they look at the environment, their garden is a bit unkempt, and they feel uneasy until they bring government over that garden. I'll talk about that as we progress. So why do we need, or do we talk about government? Why was government introduced? The purpose for all creation was government. The purpose for all creation, for creation itself, was government. And I'm going to make a very strong assertion on this. The purpose for the creation of mankind was government. Man came about. In fact, if government was not required, mankind would not have been needed. From that biblical account that I mentioned a while ago, earth needed to be kept in order, and that was what necessitated mankind as a whole. When I say man, I'm totally non-gender biased. I'm talking about mankind. So the purpose of creation for mankind was government. Now, the divine assignment of mankind was government. Divine meaning that, well, in the first instance, it was government that brought man about, And that was actually a divine assignment. It was something that man himself did not, it wasn't a matter of choice, it was a matter of necessity. That was exactly the assignment that brought man to existence. So, by that, we can therefore look at it that the fall of mankind was actually the loss of government. Now, you notice in all of this that we're not talking about religion, because religion is not what man lost. Religion is not man's divine assignment. And I'm not, well, I may sound like I'm bashing religion, but it's just to put our mind back to what is the fundamental need and the reason why we are here. So when man fell, it did not fall from a religion or from religious practice. It fell from being in control over earth. And the control we're talking about is actually the governing influence that was on earth slipped out of the hand of man. Now, when we internalize this, it changes the way we look at everything, really. And it becomes then, so when we're talking about kingdom leadership, it actually, we understand it from this basis. This whole series is very fundamental to understanding kingdom leadership. That it's actually about the concept we call government. So the concept of government was created and introduced by the creator. If something was bestowed on you, you know that you are not the originator of it. You are given, you are handed it. So government was actually handed to man. Now let's look very briefly at the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, it's amazing that I've seen a few documentaries on like one of them is The Edge of the Universe, and a few others. And as scientists begin to do perform experiments and really explore the vast universe, they begin to see more and more. As a matter of fact, the recent one I watched, actually they submitted that the universe is actually still expanding, and you almost cannot get to the end of the universe. So as vast as the universes are, as vast as the galaxies are, as many planets that there are, how is it that Earth became singled out? Whereby it was said that in the beginning God created the heavens, as many as they are, and then the Earth. There's a reason for that. So there are many planets, but there is one Earth. Earth seems to have one special purpose, one special place in all of creation. And it's because the Earth was created specifically to be inhabited. Now, the Earth was specially designed to support life conditions as we know it. Now, some of the experiments that have been done currently in the scientific world is to look at whether you can find water on some planets, so that if you can find water, then maybe there's a basis for life conditions. Now, I'm not quite sure what will be the result of those, but one thing that you can say is that you don't need to wonder whether there's water on Earth, whether the Earth can support life conditions. As a matter of fact, Earth seems to be teeming with life. It actually is. If you go into the seas and you dive down, you begin to see all of the wonderful creatures. In fact, it is as though that we have not even seen all of the creation there is. There's so much that's been discovered all the time. The Amazon forest is another wonderful place where it's just vast and inexhaustible. So the Earth was specifically designed to support life conditions. Now, let's look at the purpose for Earth. Isaiah 45 and verse 18. Look at what it says. It said, "For this is what the Lord says, He who created the heavens, He is God." Meaning, well, look, this is entirely my initiative. He who fashioned and made the earth, He founded it. Meaning, there was something about the earth in the mind of the creator. There's a deliberate effort on earth. Now, look at what He said afterwards. He did not create it to be empty. In other words, earth I mean, there may be other places that are not created to be empty, but earth is certainly one of those which was not created to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. That's why I've highlighted that phrase. Earth or clause was formed to be inhabited. It says, I am the Lord and there is no other. In other words, the word Lord from our previous discussion is the word ownership or the word owner, which means I own this and my specific intent is for earth to be inhabited. Okay. Now, so government therefore has to do with habitation because you cannot govern any piece of property that is uninhabited and uninhabited. Okay, look at it for example. Some people have left. I mean, some people. I mean, some maybe like me now. I have a village, and we have a piece of lot on the farmland, and I can tell that maybe in the last 2 3 years nobody has been there. So you can definitely tell that that piece of property is probably being inhabited by rodents. Rodents must have created their own government on that territory or in that piece of property. So it simply comes to stands to reason that if a piece of property is not governed or is not inhabited, it cannot be governed because you can't govern in absentia. So government has to do with habitation so that you can administer and rule and control the territory. So government, therefore, is not in land by itself. It's not on earth. As a matter of fact, earth is very innocent. Well, we see earthquakes here and there, but earth is really just very one innocent piece of giant. And it's because government is not in land. Government is in people. Is in people. Just like the house that you build it's just a piece of rock and metals and wood. But government over that house is actually in people that inhabit it, and those are the people that form a home inside the house. Now, where there is government, well, there is a farm in place of a bush. Now, I like to talk about this a lot. What's the difference between a farm and a bush? Between a garden and a jungle? The answer is very simple. It's government. One piece of lot is governed, and so you have a farm. The other is ungoverned, and you have a bush. So, and that's is applicable to life itself. Any part of our private lives that is ungoverned is not different from a jungle or a bush. It's there. It has a lot of potentials, but there's bush and thorns grown over it. Right. So, purpose of government still. Look at Genesis 2 verse 5. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. I like to talk about this a lot because you could tell that God in his own wisdom actually withheld the growth of plants because there was not a man to till is what to cultivate the ground. Why? If he had allowed the plants to grow, the ground will simply become a bush with no one to look after it. So government, therefore, is the introduction of order and form into environments. Another thing, government is in mankind, and mankind has responsibility for continuing creation and organization. It is man's responsibility to look after the earth. And when I say man now, I don't mean just the male species. I'm talking about all of mankind, male and female, have the mandate and the responsibility for looking after creation, to continue and extend the creation of God. Right. So now the original government, And I go back to that popular verse which most of us know already, but by heart by now, I suppose. Genesis 1:26-20. It said, then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them have dominion. That's exactly what I'm coming to. And you can see it's highlighted there. Let them have rule. And then last week, I spoke a bit about the word dominion, which has a few meanings. Mamlaka, Basilia, Rada, which is actually the word for government. So one of those words is Greek, so one other one is Hebrew. And it means kingdom, literally. Right. Now, it says to have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. That's the mandate, of course. So he created mankind in his own image. Actually, in the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. In other words, this is not man. That's why I said when we use the word man, we don't mean just only males. We actually are talking about the whole species, male and female. Now, I want to highlight very quickly the word image there. A very good synonym for that word image is nature. In other words, mankind has the same nature as God. What did God do? Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. So this man also has his own nature. So he is a continuing creation agent. All right. I'm not gonna beat on that, but let's just go on. So God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion. And that word again. Rule over the fish of the sea and birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground. As we're looking at it, we're going to say that, right. So when we're talking about kingdom leadership, has been a leadership philosophy that pre-exists every other kind of leadership. This is exactly what we're talking about. And that's why we say that our leadership is not over fellow human beings. It's actually over the earth and the conditions on the earth. So the reason for your creation, therefore, is dominion, or the other word which you call government. This is dominion mandate. The word dominion, like I was saying the other time, is the word rada. And I was looking it up just a while ago. Mamlakak. The word mamlakak is actually a Hebrew word, which means, well, it literally means kingdom, really. So, and that's why one of the first meanings that I've put in there is word kingdom. It's also the word to rule or to set the standard. The rule from the word ruler. So is the mandate of dominion on mankind is to set the standard, to rule, to control, which means to actually be in charge, to be the one who determines the conditions, to order, which is to eliminate chaos and to arrange, to bring organization into the environment, to manage, and what manage already implies something that ownership is not part of the deal. So the word manage actually is the word that refers to having stewardship or being accountable, but not owning it, because the earth is what? Is still the Lord's, the world and the people therein. So, but mankind is actually a manager, and I'm going to refer to that in a bit. Now, another mandate that mankind has is to lead. And the word lead, it means the one to initiate. It means an initiator. It means somebody who has a proactive sense to bring about change. And that's very important. In other words, if something is wrong in the environment, you are responsible. If you don't change it, it will stay exactly the same. Now, to administrate, which means to be responsible. To be responsible. Now, the word dominion, we talked about a while now, from the word mamlaka, simply means kingdom, governing, authority. This is man's assignment, to have kingdom governing authority over those elements that we mentioned a while ago. Now, to the first assignment given to mankind was kingdom governing authority. In other words, mankind is was created to be God's government or God's governing authority on earth. It's like you go into a territory and you ask who's in charge here. Well, if God says that, you should simply hold your hand up and say, I am. Right. So mankind was given the responsibility as royal regents. That's what I mean by to manage royal regents over earth, or earthly kings or local kings. That's why in a country like UK, you can actually have Her Majesty the Queen being the absolute monarch over the whole of United Kingdom. But then you then have like regent kings in territories. The Duke of so and so, the Prince of so and so. Those are like local or under serving kings under the real authority, the main authority. So is that concept of regent kings over earth. That's what man is. Man is actually God's regent king on earth. So that's why the word King of Kings makes absolute sense, and Lord of Lords, meaning we're having regency, royal regency over earth on behalf of its original owner. Absolutely. So now, of course, King of Regent Kings and Lord of Regent Lords. It's in that context that word makes absolute sense. Outside of kingdom concept, that word makes no sense, because in the first instance, outside of kingdom, we don't have kings and we don't have lords. They absolutely are irrelevant outside of kingdom concepts. Now, mankind was heaven's colony to colonize earth with heaven's government. That's exactly the reason for man. That's why man was given to earth, to govern earth as heaven is governed. Of course, when the disciples asked Jesus, how should we pray? He could have said, oh, ask for power. No, he said, when you are praying, you should ask for the government of heaven to come to earth. Period. Now, let's look at how the departure from this form of government. Now, there's a word that's called chief citizen, which was a word that was debated about many years ago by the Greek philosophers. And it came from the word politis, which means one amongst us who is above the rest. So it's in this fashion. You will have people who will elect somebody, a citizen, to be responsible for government affairs on behalf of the other citizens. Now, so which means all of the citizens just elect like an elected official, and they call him the chief citizen, or the word politis, to actually to have a contractual government office on behalf of the rest of the people. But his purpose is actually to take orders from the citizens, from the rest of the citizens, in terms of what they want and how they want their territory to be governed. So that was a system that was used early days by the Greek, and this was the system that was afterwards, after the Roman government took over that environment and they began to really expand the Greek philosophy, was actually to then make this a popular form of government around the world. We call it democracy. Now, one of the way that system has been sort of maybe a departure from the original intent. The original intent of that form of government was to prevent abuse. But what has since happened over there is to have what you call benefactors, which means the chief citizen, rather than being one who actually serves the rest of the people, is often seen as benefactor, someone who derives value from the other people. and sometimes controlling, which is seen as lording it over the other people. So if I'm elected, then I must be better than the rest of them. And so a bit controlling and lording it over the other people. And of course, if that position, brings about so much privileges, then it becomes something that, most people want to actually get into through various methods. And so there's that desire to be greater or to be great at the expense of other people. Of course, things like lobbying, manipulating naturally will come into place, and maneuvering your way to the leadership position. So that's why you have people who tend to lobby and jockey for positions. It became a norm. Right now, you'll be surprised that this is not only in the in the political sense of government as we know it. It's also in in so many environments, including in religious environments like churches, where you want to manipulate your way and jockey for position, um, to get into position of influence. Now, but let's see how this differs from the government that God had in mind. Now look at Luke 22, verse 25-26. Jesus said unto them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. I mean, see exactly what we're talking about in the previous slide. They actually call themselves benefactors. They feel like, look, I'm privileged and I have to be served. I have to be taken care of. But you see exactly what how this differs from the original idea that God had in mind. Now he said, but you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. In other words, our own way to administrate government is not to be benefactors, it's not to be people who lord it or who manipulate the system to get into a position of influence. But he said, look, you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. The word youngest is actually in the context of some cultures where the younger one is the one who is responsible for serving the elders. And that's exactly what Jesus was saying in that place. So a leader, therefore, is the host and not the parasite. I did biology a few years ago, and you have what they call epiphytes that we live inside what they call the host. So the epiphyte will attach itself to the main tree, which is the host, and then feed from the sap of that tree. Okay, now the leader is not to be the parasite. The leader has to be the host. The leader cannot be the benefactor. The leader has to be the one who serves. This is exactly the basis for what we call servant leadership. Is a leader who serves, not a leader who seeks to benefit. Okay, now don't feed on them. In other words, this is a mandate really. We are not to feed on people. We are to feed them with our resources, and as a matter of fact, even ourselves, our very selves. Don't feed on them, feed them. So leadership is not about power, but actually about empowering others. Leadership is not about arrogation of authority, but giving authority. It's about helping people to be who they are and empowering them to serve in those capacities. Right, created to govern. Look at Psalm 8 from verse 4-8. I love this so much. So it says, what are human beings that you think of them? Mere mortals that you care for them. And it says, yet you made them inferior only to yourself. You crown them with glory and honor. You crown them with glory and honor. What are human beings that you think of them? Mere mortals that you care for them. Yet you made them inferior only to yourselves or to yourself. You crown them with glory and honor. This is saying, look, it's exactly what we are talking about when it said, and he made man in his own image, in his own nature, just like himself. So, which means man is inferior really only to God. It is in the same light that when you look at the royal family, for example, Prince Charles is inferior only to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. As far as the royal household is concerned and the government of the United Kingdom is concerned, he is inferior only to Her Majesty the Queen. The same way, Prince William only in that order. So when God created man, he made mankind only inferior to himself. And he says, look, man actually has, or human beings actually have their own glory and honor. I mean, this is entirely contrasting to what religion teaches. Now, and it says, you appointed them rulers over everything you made. You placed them over all creation. I want us to look and see how closely related this verse of scriptures are to Genesis chapter 1, 26, 27, and 28. You appointed them rulers over everything you made. You placed them over all creation. And it's listing the creation now. Sheep, cattle, wild animals too, the best of the birds, and fish and creatures in the seas. I mean, let them have dominion over the fish, the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, over the fish, and over all creatures that creeps and move upon the face of the earth. I mean, this is almost like a repetition of Genesis chapter 1, 26, 27, and 28. Now, I want to submit to us that our mandate is to be just like our Father. And how do we be like a Father? The impact and the whole essence of this presentation today is about understanding our true influence. Understanding our true influence, which is our governance, our authority to govern on earth, to bring the influence of the kingdom of the Father on earth. And this is the fundamental basis of kingdom leadership. So let's look at Matthew 5 from verse 13. It says, you are the salt of the earth. And of course, that verse continues a bit. You are the salt of the earth. What is salt used for? Salt is essentially used for preservation. It's used as a preservative. After you've done your fish or your meat, you then put salt around it to ingredients, which means the real assignment that we have is, and look, see exactly what it says there, salt of the earth. In other words, our primary assignment is managing the earth and preventing it from decadence. Let them have dominion over the earth, over all the earth. Okay, now then he went to say something. He said, look, if salt has the ability of salt to preserve is actually borne by something they call the savor of the salt, which means the ability of salt. There's something in salt that makes it to act as a preservative. Now, it says that if salt, therefore, loses its savor, how shall it be able to perform its function of preserving the earth? It is therefore good for nothing, but that men should throw it on the road and trample on it. Let me give us an insight here. When roads are being built, one of the ingredients they use is actually salt. And it's actually salt that no longer has a savor. So if salt no longer has a savor, all they do is to take it and pour it and use it as part of making the road that we drive on. You can do your research and find out this is absolutely true. So that's why it says when salt has lost its savor, the only thing you can do with it is to treat it like sand. Okay, And of course, you can tell that salt actually looks like sand, except that it has something they call savor, the ability to preserve. It has a preservative agent. Now, again, it says, you are the light of the world. And light simply means knowledge. You are the actual knowledge of the world. Now, it says world because what are inside world? The people. So you are the one to bring the true knowledge, the original precept to the world of humans. Now, it says something to do about light. It says, when you light your candle, do you keep it hidden from people? No. It says you put it in a place where every other human being can see it so that they can know how to go on their way. In other words, our real ability to influence our environment is the ability to show the original precept that men can walk by so that they don't stumble and fall. That's why, it now charges us this. It says, in that same way that you are the light and salt, it says, let your light shine before others. It's always, when you talk about world, all the time, every time, it's always talking about people. That's why, it says, let your light shine before others who are in the world, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. In other words, when your good deed is seen, there's something else should come out of it. They should be seeing a nature, which is what the word glory is. We spoke about that last week. The word glory means the true nature, the full weight of something. So it says, by the good deeds, your true nature should show. In fact, you should show the true nature of your Father. And your Father is not on earth, is in heaven. In other words, that is a principal way of bringing heaven's influence on earth. That's why even Jesus himself, in his closing remark, he said, guys, I'm sending you out. Go into all the world. Again, he didn't say go into all the earth. Go into all the world and make disciples of men. All the time, the word world always is always said in relation to human beings, to mankind. So he said, go into all the systems, which is what the world is. Go into all the systems where mankind have organized themselves and bear a different kind of precept, different kind of light. Shine it to them so that they see the good deeds that are born out of the light that you have, and they say, wow, this is not from here. This guy must be from another place. This is literally out of this world. And so they give the credit. They say, no, it must be coming from another place. So this is the crux of our discussion today. And I have a few announcements to make, which I already indicated in the email that I sent out. And is that from, by God's grace, from August, we want to, bring a few changes and introduce some initiatives into the way we handle our operations at the Executive Network. We want to divide, like you have 4 weeks in a month. So we want our first week to be actually for presentations such as this. Then in the second week, we want to have somebody from the team, from the platform, to present to us. And in the third week, our preference is to have a guest speaker to come to speak to us. That's why on August the 20th, we're having a guest speaker, Trista Sue Cragg, who is a global leader. She's making absolute impact around the world, especially in the United States. And so we want to have her. She's agreed to come on board to be a blessing to us, and she wants to talk on a subject called visionary leadership. She qualifies to talk on that because she's absolutely making tremendous impact around the world, and you will hear from her. So please spread the word, invite some people to come and be part of that, especially that August 20. But Now, the last week of the month, what we want to do is to have a Q&A session where we just kind of open the floor and we go straight into questions. So which means everybody I want to hear everybody speak, and that's what that the second and fourth week are actually driven to bring out what you know is right inside of you. Leaders have they should express their mind. So, and there's a lot of virtue in you. There's a lot of light inside of you, which we want to actually present to the world. As a matter of fact, we want to also use that as a platform for training some of our leaders so that they can gain the confidence and be able to really put their thoughts into concrete, expressible words. So, I wanted to look forward to it right from starting from next month. So, I want to see the leader who will take the initiative and be the first person to do the presentation. And then if I don't have a nomination, I think I can use my prerogative to assign. So that's going to be happening from August onwards, and we want to have it that way so that we can have the very best that is inside all of us. Bring that to the table and be a blessing to the world. So thank you for joining us, and I want to say something in closing, which is reveal the glory that is trapped inside of you. Reveal the glory that is trapped inside of you. And that's the glory of your Father, which is connected to your light shining. Now, when most of us have computers, and if you have a computer that is from other than Apple computer, there's always something that you see on the side of a computer, like a logo, and it's a logo from Intel. It will tell you what kind of processor you have in your computer, and it says Intel inside. Now, I want to tell you something that you have inside, which you probably know already, but I'm going to bring it to light now. What you have right inside of you is glory. So reveal the glory that is inside of you. I'm going to stop here, and thank you for joining us this time. Bring more of your friends. If you think this is going to be a blessing to anybody, bring them on board. Let's have participation. Let's have a time of change. And don't forget that there is glory inside of you. What you have is glory inside. God bless you, and see you next time.